What's up, everybody? Nick Dwyer here for the 10th inning, giving you another edition of This Day in Sports History. In yesterday's episode, we saw the great Hank Aaron hit his 755th and final home run of his career. We do have another Hank Aaron career home run milestone today, as well as a matchup between two 300-game winners and a very funny record in Major League Baseball you don't want to miss. So if you all enjoy this video, leave a like on it. If you're new to the channel, you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. This Day in Sports History. We started out today in 1884, and we would have the first ever Test cricket match played at Lord's in England. 4 years later, in 1888, at Wimbledon, on the women's side, Lottie Dod would retain her title, defeating Blanche Bingley Hilliard 6-3, 6-3 in straight sets to win her second of 5 majors. Moved to Major League Baseball in 1892, and we would see a matchup of 300-game winners, which saw the Phillies' Tim Keefe going up against Pud Galvin of the Browns, and the Phillies would get the 2-0 victory. This would be the last time we would see two National League pitchers with over 300 or more victories at the time facing each other until 2005, when we saw Greg Maddux of the Cubs defeat Roger Clemens of the Astros 3-2. 4 years later, in 1896, at Wimbledon, on the women's side, Charlotte Cooper, who was the defending champion, would defeat Alice Simpson Pickering 6-2, 6-3 in straight sets to claim her second of 5 majors. We move up all the way to 1945 in Major League Baseball. In a game between the Philadelphia Athletics and the Detroit Tigers, they would play the second longest game in Major League history, which lasted 24 innings and ended in a 1-1 tie, with Detroit's pitcher Les Mueller setting a modern-day record by pitching 19 2/3 innings in the 4-hour and 48-minute game. 2 years later, we remain in Major League Baseball, and Frankie Frisch, who would bat .316 in his career, would become the first switch hitter inducted into Cooperstown. Also part of the 47 class was Carl Hubbell, Mickey Cochran, and Lefty Grove. We move up a decade to 1957 at the PGA Championship, and Lionel Hebert would win 2-1 over Dow Finsterwald in the last time the event would be played under match play. This would be Hebert's only major of his career. 2 years later, in 1959, the Boston Red Sox would finally integrate their team 12 years after Jackie Robinson made his debut in 1947. In the game, Pumpsie Green pinch ran in the 8th inning in a 2-1 loss to the Chicago White Sox. 4 years later, in 1963, at the PGA Championship, Jack Nicklaus, with a score of 5 under, would win his first of 5 PGA Championships, 2 strokes ahead of runner-up Dave Ragan to win his third of 18 majors. Stay at the PGA Championship, this time in 1968, Julius Boros, with a score of 1 over, would become the oldest winner of a major at 48 years old, 1 stroke ahead of runners-up Bob Charles and Arnold Palmer to claim his third and final major. Also in 1968, at the Tour de France, Jan Janssen would get his only Tour victory. 2 years later in Major League Baseball, we have a potential no-hitter, but in the Padres game against the Mets, the Padres were trailing 1-0, and despite the chance for the no-hitter, in the 8th inning, the Padres decided to pinch hit for pitcher Clay Kirby. I know I would have been very mad at that if I was the pitcher, but we digress. In the next inning, Jack Baldsham would come in and pitch for the Padres. He would fail to keep New York hitless, and San Diego would eventually lose 3-0. Just a little side note here, the Padres are still the only team to not have a no-hitter in MLB history. Staying in baseball, in 1973, Hank Aaron would hit his 700th career home run off of Ken Brett. This home run came in the 3rd inning of the team's 8-4 loss in Atlanta, making Aaron at the time only the second MLB player to ever hit 700 career home runs. 1 year later, in 1974, at the U.S. Women's Open, Sandra Haney, with a score of 7 over, would win 1 stroke ahead of runners-up Beth Stone and Carol Mann to win her third of 4 major championships. Also in 1974, at the 61st edition of the Tour de France, Eddie Merckx would win his 5th tour that he would enter, equaling Jacques Anquetil record 4 tour victories. We move up to 1975 and we have a record that no one wants in Major League Baseball. New York Mets player Felix Millan would hit 4 singles in the game. Good day, right? Well, the person right behind him, Joe Torre, would then go hit into 4 double plays. At that point, it seems like every time you get on base, you may as well just walk back to the dugout. You know you're getting out anyway. Torre would become the first player in National League history to hit into 4 straight double plays. Again, something you don't want. But we get off baseball, go to the British Open in 1979. Seve Ballesteros, with a score of 1 under, would win 3 strokes ahead of runners-up Jack Nicklaus and Ben Crenshaw. This would be the first of 5 majors for Ballesteros. 6 years later in the British Open in 1985, Sandy Lyle, with a score of 2 over, would win his only Open title, 1 stroke ahead of runner-up Payne Stewart. This would also be his first of 2 majors in his career. Also in 1985, at the Tour de France, Bernard Hinault would win his 5th Tour, equaling Jacques Anquetil and Eddie Merckx. Moved to boxing 4 years later in 1989, and Mike Tyson would knock out Carl Williams in 1 minute and 33 seconds to retain the heavyweight title. Back to the British Open in 1991, Ian Baker Finch, with a score of 8 under, would win his only major championship, 2 strokes ahead of runner-up Mike Harwood. 2 years later, we have a record in swimming, 1993. Angela Kennedy would swim the world record 50-meter butterfly at 26.93 seconds. It would later be broken, however, still a record. Back to the British Open in 1996, Tom Lehman, with a score of 13 under, would win his only major, 2 strokes ahead of Mark McCumber and Ernie Els. With this victory, Lehman would become the first American to win since Bobby Jones 70 years prior. Also in 96, in hockey, Wayne Gretzky would sign a 2-year deal to play with the New York Rangers, and he would end up finishing his career with the Rangers. Also in 96, at the 83rd Tour de France, Bjarne Riels would get the victory, but later that year, Riels would admit to the use of doping during the 96 Tour. The Tour de France organizers have stated that they no longer consider him to be the winner, although the official status has not changed as of yet. And if it ever does, Jan Ullrich would get the victory as he came in second. We moved to 2002 at the British Open. Ernie Els, with a score of 6 under, would win his first of 2 Open titles after a playoff with Stuart Appleby, Steve Elkington, and Thomas Levitt to win his 3rd of 4 majors. Stay in 2002, with a record 6 races remaining, Michael Schumacher would clinch his 5th of 7 F1 World Drivers' Championships after a victory at the French Grand Prix. This would also be his 3rd straight title victory. We moved to Major League Baseball in 2004, and in the Baltimore Orioles Boston Red Sox game, David Newhan hit a rare inside the park home run at Fenway, and although he hit the inside the park home run, this play was known for Manny being Manny. Now Johnny Damon was in center field, and everyone knows Johnny Damon didn't have a great arm, but that doesn't mean you cut him off as another outfielder. Left fielder Manny Ramirez would cut off Johnny Damon's throw from center field, allowing Newhan and another runner to score in the 10-5 victory for the Orioles. 3 years later, we moved to rugby in 2007, and New Zealand would defeat Australia 26-12, pitching up their 3rd consecutive Tri-Nations Rugby Series victory. 1 year later, in Major League Baseball, Diamondbacks left-hander Randy Johnson became the first Major League pitcher to collect 2,000 strikeouts for 2 separate teams. While pitching with the Mariners, Johnson would strike out 2,162 batters from 1989 to 98, and in this game against the Cubs, he would strike out Aramis Ramirez to get his 2,000th and become the first player to ever do it. We end today off in 2013, and we have a Tour de France to talk about and a British Open. We start with the Tour de France, and in the 100th edition of the Tour de France, Chris Froome would get his first of 4 titles in the Tour. Finally at the British Open, Phil Mickelson, with a score of 3 under, would win his 5th and final major, 3 strokes ahead of runner-up Henrik Stenson. So there you have it. That's what happened on this day in sports history. If I left anything out, let me know down in the comment section. If I mispronounced any names, I do apologize. But I will see everybody tomorrow. Hope everybody out there is doing great. For Nick Wire, in the 10th inning. See ya.